They appreciated it because I would regularly go up on Morse at Fragrance Island before they moved also to 79th Street. Yeah, they moved on 79th Street, but I would go to Fragrance Island. But I said, you know what? Let me give a wand a try. Then a pipe bursted in his shop, and steam came out everywhere, and the steam somehow diluted the fragrance. So that, like, because the whole room filled with steam or something like that, the oil just wasn't the heat. It diluted the fragrance. So I went back in. Now he didn't disclose any of this. I went back in and just said, everything you gave me last time, give it to me again. It's like maybe a small order, $200, $300 or something like that. Every time you gave me, give it to me again, right? Because they really enjoyed it. I'm going back with the same thing. As soon as I got out there, people were trying it. They say, I didn't smell it. I said, let me see that. I said, me either. right. So I called Awan and I said, man, something is different about this fragrance that you gave me this time. It's like none of them, I can't smell any of them. And then Awan, mashallah, being a good Muslim brother, he said, yeah, man, I had some kind of pipe burst. Some kind of pipe bursted in the shop filled with steam, and I think it affected the quality of the perfume or affected the dry down of the perfume. It's not as strong as it normally is. And so I said, oh, Juan, why didn't you tell me this before I bought it? He said, man, it slipped my mind. I said, I'm coming back to bring back what I got, and I need my money back. And before I could even, the phone just got, so 10 minutes later, I'm up there. Oh, wow, man, I need my money back. He pointed to a sign and said, all sales are final. He pointed to a sign and said, I'm sorry, but all sales are final. We went back and forth for about 30 minutes. Finally, I said to him, you know what? You don't want to refund my money, you keep the money. You keep this fragrance too. We'll just deal with it in the court of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we see Allah, we'll deal with it then. And I turned around and he said, wait, hold on. He said, hey, man, now why would you say something like that? He said, man, take your money back. He gave me every single cent back. And the thing about it, in that position, I had the advantage because I was the one saying, you sold me a defective product, right? In that, and I wasn't like trying to like throw down the gauntlet or trying to like just the coup de grace. It was, and I had never said that to anybody. It was just something that came to my mind. We go back, I said, man, why you should have told me, I didn't know. He said, no, brother, you should have tested the fragrance. Every time I get the fragrance, it could be different. These are natural fragrances. There are natural variations. You have to, when you go to the grocery store, if you buy an orange, it didn't taste like the orange you bought last week. Do you take your oranges back? I mean, he had his arguments too, right? There's a natural. I said, but you told me there was something that happened, but you didn't ask me. We just went back and forth. Finally, businesses, so subhanAllah. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "At-tajiru aminu saduqu ma'an nabiyyin wa siddiqin wa shuhada." And I got a book for your wife, but I got to bring. I was in DC. I got it for her while I was in DC. MashaAllah. But the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "A trustworthy businessman is with the prophets, the martyrs, and the righteous on the day of judgment." Why? Because it is hard to retain your honesty, hard to retain your virtue when you're doing business. People lie when doing business and don't even think about it as lie. Yeah. No. I knew a guy and I've mentioned this story before, man. He worked at a fast food restaurant, and I went to visit him. So I'm behind the thick bulletproof glass, and I noticed, oddly enough, whenever somebody, ordered a large French fry or something, he would be stuffing the fries in the box, so like the fries are coming out of the container. And I said to him, it caught my attention. I said, actually, I think there's enough fries in the box. And he said to me, the last thing I want Allah to ask me about on the day of judgment is some fried potatoes. You know what I'm saying? If they order a large, they will get a large. I don't want anybody to say, he's shorting. If you look at this, and this is the large, you expect it to be full, I'm gonna make sure it's full. And I thought, and I thought to myself, this is what, but the point is, and then I was mentioning, I had never said that to anybody, but I just said that in frustration. You know what? Keep the products, keep my money. We'll deal with it when we see Allah. And I just turned, I looked back, he said, hey man, why would you say something like that? I said, look, I'm gonna give you this money. And I remember how my respect for him, like, okay, he had his policy, we had our difference of opinion, this steam thing happened, and the perfume was defective, and I have a policy, but when he heard we'll deal with it when we meet Allah, it stopped him in his tracks. No, you know what? You're right. I don't want those problems. But this name Rahim, the name Rahman, the name Ra'uf, it suggests that if somebody comes to you and they're asking for your forgiveness, then you should grant it to them. You should grant it to them. I realize then that I'm about to get some trouble now. I don't care. I don't care about a little trouble. But I realize that we are, and I don't think this is wrong. But we're living in a time where it seems as though there is some cultural currency in being someone that has been victimized or someone that has been violated, or, there is some kind of currency in holding on to a traumatic experience. And, when you talk about forgiveness now, you have to mention, and we're not talking about, or like major things. When we mean just like the person, parked in my parking spot, or, however, and I appreciate that. I see that as just kind of like a sign of the times. But I will have you know that the Prophet ﷺ had to forgive people for doing major harm to him. Not just like, hey man, that's my parking spot. Or like, hey, you walked in my apartment with mud on your shoes. No, people killed his uncle. He had to forgive. People slandered his wife. He had to forgive. People killed followers of his. He had to forgive. I mean, sometimes I think to myself, I know where we appear to be as a society, where it's like forgiveness is a process. And I embrace that. I embrace it's a process, because I don't think it is healthy for a person to be compelled to forgive when they're not ready. I don't think a person should be, if you were wronged by somebody, I don't think anybody should put pressure on you. Hey man, giving you all these ayat, all of these hadith, you just might not be ready to forgive the person. I get that. You might be like, I'm not there yet. I need to just, I'm not there yet. But I still think in the interest of our faith, we have to hold the ideal out for the person. Just to say, we hope you get there. Not saying that you're there now, but this is what prophetic forgiveness looks like. Take your time. Somehow now, people don't even like to mention that, forgiveness should be a goal. some people feel like by mentioning forgiveness, you're undermining the integrity of the person that was harmed. So I just, I was like, ooh, I don't know how but I think you can give them their space. You can allow them their time while still saying, look, this is the ideal. This is where we would hope to be, is a willingness to forgive. I remind you all, and I'm sure you're familiar with this hadith, but the Prophet ﷺ was sitting in Masjid al-Nabawi, and he said to the Sahaba, radiallahu anhum jami'an, the next person that comes through this door is a person of paradise, is a person going to heaven. And the person that came through the door was just a regular Joe, man. Regular Yusuf, a regular you, right? Just a regular, not somebody conspicuously known for his piety. Just a man. And so Abdullah ibn Umar, followed this man home and told the man a little lie. My father and I were having some issues. And see, that's another thing, man. We say we want community, but a lot of the requirements of community, we're not ready. A lot of us don't realize that it is actually a Muslim's right to stay with another Muslim for three days. A Muslim was homeless. He said, man, look, now everything beyond 3 days is charity, right? Everything beyond. So if a sister said, I've fallen on hard times, abusive husband, just trying to, put some things together, Run, could I stay with you for a few days? I feel like as a community, we are so protective of our privacy. It's like, now the brothers, all of us do the same thing. We blame it on our wives. We lie. Yeah, we come on, man. We lie. Man. Like, man, my wife is just, in my case, my wife is actually, very, very generous and very understanding woman. If I said it was someone she probably would say no problem. But without even asking her, my wife is here. It just, I mean, the home is kind of a sanctuary where she can really fully be comfortable and be, have a good guest. No, it's like, it's just, but at that time, they actually lived according to those principles. Like, give me my 3 days. I need somewhere to stay. Give me my 3 days. Come on in. Right? We can't even imagine that. Now, to our credit though, right? Because you have to mention some of the gaps in the context. They lived in a Muslim community where people generally knew each other, knew each other's families, knew each other's backgrounds, right? So when someone showed up to your house, you could have at least a halfway decent sense of this person's habits, their understanding of appropriate and inappropriate, their manners. We live in kind of a homogenous kind of context that we all have very similar values. So, yeah, sure. We live in a community that is very diverse. So you just don't know, right? You just don't know. Someone, you say, yeah, come over. What they think is inappropriate, he might go straight to the refrigerator. SubhanAllah, man, you ain't got nothing in there. I shall think something. Oh, oh wow, okay. That's what we do. Okay, brotherhood on 3, 1, 2, 3, go. You know what I'm saying? Oh, okay. You just don't know, and then you just don't know who the person is. Where are they a person of upstanding character or just some vagrant that nobody knows? So I'm not saying that we should say to anybody who comes to the door, I'm a Muslim. Let me in your house. Oh, sure. I'm not saying I'm not going to do it. You know what I mean? You look like a man that loves the sunnah, but I don't think you're going to do that either. No, I mean, so it's a different world. But at that time, people used to do things like that, right? So he's watching this man for 3 days. Man is going out, praying the prayers, coming back in. That's it. No fasting, no dhikr. He's not sitting and remembering Allah. He's not reciting the Quran. And at the end of the 3rd day, Abdullah just tells him, there's no issue with me and my father. The man said, well, why did you make up that story? He said, because the Prophet ﷺ told us that you were a person of paradise. And I just wanted to get close to you so I could observe you, so I could see what you did, so I could do it myself. The man said, I don't do anything special, man. Just, nothing. And he thought about it. He said, well, before I go to sleep at night, I remove hip, I remove a ghil, I remove any animosity I have in my heart toward anybody. Anybody that might have rubbed me the wrong way, said something wrong to me, I forgive them, I let it go. At the end of the night, I don't sleep with it. Okay, man, I'm letting that go, right? And it was that. That was the thing that made him a person of paradise. So we mention that not to say if somebody has been molested, sexually assaulted, abused by their spouse, jumped, beat up, raped. Yeah, you just got to forgive. Like this man used to forgive everybody. Like that would be insensitive and unrealistic. But forgiveness is a great gift, not only to that person, but to yourself. And that's what the hadith is saying. That man earned himself paradise by virtue of his forgiveness, his willingness to forgive people. It's okay, right? So if you find yourself in that position, expressing a willingness to forgive is divine, man. Allah Al-Rahman, you get a chance to be Rahim, is to be a person that's merciful. The Prophet ﷺ said, Irham man fil ard, yarhamkum man fis sama. Have mercy on those on earth, and God will have mercy on you. Right? The story of, say, the Aisha and the Ifk. This is known as Hadithul Ifk. Ifk and Buhtan in the Arabic language refer, you got a big window that popped up there. But I think people can still see me because I still see myself. Okay. But Ifk and Buhtan refer to lies, right? like vicious lies, ifk, right? Iftira, buhtan, all of these words, that's one of my favorite words ever, buhtan. It sounds like a buhtan al-azim. This is a complete lie. So the Prophet ﷺ, and this, you see something in his character, man. The Prophet ﷺ was sensitive to the fact that his wives wanted to get out of the house. They just wanted to get out. They just wanted to go somewhere. So even if, and you also see something in their love for the Prophet ﷺ, even if he was going to like battle, they would say, can we go? Doesn't sound like a romantic evening to me. It's like anywhere I'd want to go with my wife, going to the battlefield, you want to come out here with me. But they would say, can we go? And so the Prophet ﷺ, being very careful about favoritism or partisanship, he would make them draw lots. Does everybody know what drawing lots is? To draw lots, you take something, you break it, you put it in a hat or something like that. And people pick out, whoever gets the longest one wins. That's what it means to draw a lot. Take like a stick, group of sticks, you break them up, throw them in the hat, kind of at random. Everybody picks them out the hat. Whoever gets the longest stick, they win, right? So Aisha, the Judah lots, she got the longest stick. she's gonna go with the Prophet ﷺ. She was being carried in a palanquin, which is a word that I've only heard. It was, man, I tell you, man, Desi Muslims, man. Desi Muslims is smart people, man. Because the word in Arabic is hodaj. The word in Arabic is hodaj. As I was telling this story, and I was like, Aisha was being carried in a hodaj. And I said, in English, it's like and this guy, man, well-dressed, suit, tie, clean shaven. I said, he looked at me and said, palanquin. I said, palanquin. That's called a palanquin. And, so I said, how did you know that? I stopped to talk. How did you know that? He said, because in the Hyderabadi tradition, in the wedding, we carry the woman in the palanquin, right? In India, that's how we do it. And I was like, mashallah, some people still do this. You know what I'm saying? We carry the woman in the palanquin. You know what I'm saying? So Aisha was being carried in a palanquin. I just like saying the word, in a palanquin. They're carrying her. And the Prophet was walking alongside the palanquin. And the story has many beautiful parts, but the brother carrying it, I believe it was Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas, somebody, but they were handling it a little rough. They was kind of like, just carrying that thing, you know what I mean? And the Prophet looked, rifkan, bil khawarir, like, Sa'ad, gentle, come on. It's like this precious crystal in there. Like, so for like men, and my wife is like, what are you doing? But he was just carrying it. He carried me. Like, come on, let's go. I looked at him, I was like, whoa. Just probably just telling you, whoa. And he goes, then he started carrying it nice and slow, you know what I'm saying? He started carrying it nice and slow, right? So they get there, and they ended up doing no fighting, which is an important detail. When we look at what's called the Ghazawat, the battles of the Prophet, the vast majority of them were battles in which no blood was shed. They just called them battles whenever the Prophet was put on his armor and he went out. That's called a ghazwa. That's called a battle. But a lot of them ended up just being what we would call in English skirmishes. 4 or 5 people get into a little thing and they go off, or end up being a reconnaissance mission. We just going scouting the enemy. That's all they made me up. We're just going, just scouting the enemy, just looking, just trying to, see what we can see. Pick up tracks on the ground. So they ended up doing no fighting. Aisha, while the Prophet was out doing this recon, she had to go to the bathroom. She had a necklace that he had given her that said Allah. So she got out to relieve herself. She took the necklace off and sat it down, and then took care of her business. She went back to the palanquin. As she's sitting inside the palanquin, she feels for the necklace. Necklace is still out there. She gets out of the palanquin again. We sometimes I think we think about the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, and we don't realize, man, these were very strong, very assertive, very assertive women. So she didn't like tell anybody, or she just jumped out. I gotta get my necklace. Go to get it. She was such a petite woman that when the army was going back to Medina, they raised the palanquin, they raised the hodaj. They could not tell that she was not inside. They couldn't tell that she wasn't in there. So they go back. She comes to see everybody gone. she immediately begins to panic. Because, I mean, of course, she probably knew at some point the Prophet ﷺ will recognize that I'm not in there and will come back and get me. But one thing that we don't realize about passage in the desert, man, it can be quite perilous, man. People die. Well, when the Prophet ﷺ says, "As-safaru qit'atun min al-adab," traveling is a piece of torment. He wasn't talking about business class on the plane. You got the whole thing laid out and you eat gourmet food. We said that traveling is dangerous. Like to understand the seerah of the Prophet Muhammad, there is so much you have to do to kind of like leave your context and then transport to his context. So there is no police force. There is no central government. There are just tribes. And if you get caught by raiders or you get caught by highway robbers and you don't have anybody with you that can protect you, so for you. You'll probably be enslaved, maybe forced to prostitute if you're a woman. This is the world that they lived in. So Aisha is panicking. She's all by herself. Even though she probably doesn't think I'm gonna die, but I could be abducted. And also too, when we think about somebody being lost at night, somehow we think they're standing under a street light waiting for their Uber, waiting for my Uber. In the desert, man, it gets so dark out there. You can put your hand, when the moon is waxing, you can put your hand right in front like that and barely see it. I mean, it's scary out there, right? It was, I want to say Suhaib ibn Amr, but a young companion of the Prophet Muhammad happened to be coming back for something, or he happened to still be there for something. Young, very handsome. He sees Aisha and he says, SubhanAllah, it's Aisha, the wife of the Prophet. He said, you can get on my camel. I will take it by the lijab. I will take it by the reins. And I will walk it back to Medina. Right? So it's not like you got to ride and hold me. It's not that we're going to ride on the same camel. It's not that I'm going to ride and hold you. You ride the camel, I'll walk the camel. And they say he never even looked at her. Right? He walked the camel and kept his head completely forward. Right? He realizes the very sensitive nature of what's happening here. Right? But that's one thing I appreciate about their society. People were aware of the connotations of things. She's coming back with me in the middle of the night, alone. This doesn't have a great look to it. The optics are not great. The optics are not great. When they come into Medina, the rumor mill starts immediately. Now, mind you, these are companions of the Prophet Muhammad. This is a proof that the allure of rumors is sometimes irresistible. Good people. The wife of the Prophet ﷺ is having an affair. She got caught. We saw her coming in. And then, as is the case with rumors, you start with something completely false. And then you end with something even more false. He had a smile on his face. When he came in, he was looking happy. He was, right? Yeah, I've always had some question about his character. It looks very strange. Now, many people that were good people, somebody named Hassan bin Thabit, who was a poet laureate, he was like the poet laureate of the Prophet ﷺ. He got in on it. he started, man, yo, man. I mean, we love Hassan there. But this just shows, I mean, people bail for this. Oh man, it's ugly, bro. I mean, the prophet's household out of control. It's, it goes like this. You had many companions. Hussein Abu Bakr, the father of Aisha, Abu Bakr had either paid for their emancipation, or if they were disowned by their tribes, Abu Bakr used to give them monthly stipends. He was very wealthy, right? You embrace Islam, your people reject you, I'll support you. Don't worry about it. There was a man named Mistah. His name was Mistah. He was one of the people being sponsored by Sayyidina Abu Bakr. He was one of the people spreading the rumor most vigorously. Now, I don't know about you, but if a woman's father gives me money every month and somebody has something bad to say about her, I'm gonna jump up and hit them in the mouth. You know what I mean? Yeah, she did. Man, her father, no, no chance. You don't even know what happened. I don't. I know her father give me that money. That's what I do. I don't know what happened. I know her father gives me that money every month. So ain't no way you can sit up here talking about that woman like that. I mean, you know what I'm saying? So, no, but he was going like harder than anybody, right? Make a long story short, verses in Surah An-Nur, they come down, they exonerate Aisha. She's innocent. The people that spread this rumor, in trouble, right? People that spread this rumor, in trouble. The Prophet ﷺ is given the ahkam of qadr, and this is one, and look, this is one of those things that, man, modern day Muslims don't realize what they're doing. Qadr is to claim that somebody had an indecent sexual relationship. Qadr, it's called qadr in Arabic. To claim that somebody, and what the ayat about qadr say is that if you can't substantiate your claim with 4 eyewitnesses, don't even mention it. Don't even mention this about somebody. Even if you think it. Now, and here's the thing. Maybe we know a man and a woman live together. Maybe we know they live together. Maybe we see a man and a woman at the movies together. Maybe we see them in a car together at night. Maybe we see them walk into a hotel together. None of us have actually seen them having sexual relations, right? It's actually mentioned that you should not say, to even speculate, to even suggest that they have, her and him. I think they're having some kind of an affair, some kind of sexual relationship. This is haram lil ghaya. This is completely impermissible. Completely. In that situation, the only thing you can do is say, it's not my business. I don't know, I really don't have anything to do with that. Right? And it's because of this story. This is when the verses came. I really don't know anything about that. I really don't know anything about that. Right? And I think this highlights the fact that those kind of allegations can destroy families, destroy communities. I mean, easily. So much so that even the Prophet ﷺ, he receives revelation from Allah, he got confused. Right? What? Who? What happened? Very, very deadly. Deadly to family, deadly to relationships, deadly to community. Those kinds of allegations. We don't make them about anybody unless there's like decisive proof. Right? You don't make those allegations about anybody. You see 2 people together. I did see them together, but I didn't see them, together. I didn't see them. I don't know anything about that. You know what I mean? I don't know anything about that. Mr. Abu Bakr was so offended, because you have to realize, This was about the honor of his daughter. He told Mr. You know, man, after all I've done for you, you turn around and besmirch. You turn around and humiliate my daughter. He said, man, for as long as I live, I will never give you anything in life. Don't ever ask me for anything. And at the time, Mr. I said, well, you know, I'm sorry, but that's how you feel about it. You know what I mean? You know. And then it ended up, Mr. His life ended up getting really, really hard. And he just really, really fell on hard time without saying Abu Bakr, you know, to support him. And so he went to the Prophet ﷺ, the man whose wife he was talking about. And he said, you know, saying Abu Bakr, he used to give us money, and we kind of fell into that whole if thing. You know, we kind of made that mistake. We kind of fell into that. And he has stopped supporting us. And I don't even know if we can make it without his support. Do you think you could intervene? Do you think you could talk to him about resuming his support? And so the Prophet ﷺ went on behalf of the man that slandered his wife to his wife's father, his father-in-law, and said, you know, Mr. You know, he spoke with me today. And he was asking if you could resume the support, you know, that you used to, you know, offer him. And at first, Abu Bakr said, I will never give him anything. Never. Never. That's over. That ship is sailed. I will never give him anything. And then the Prophet said to him, Abu Bakr, don't you want Allah to forgive you? But it changed everything. If you make a mistake, don't you want Allah to forgive you? Don't you want Allah to forgive you? Abu Bakr. You want to know why we say Abu Bakr? He resumed the support, then he doubled it. That's saying Abu Bakr. You know what? This is what I used to give you. Just a little bit on top of that. That's the person of ihsan. That's the person of ihsan. Right? These were serious, you know, these were serious things, man. Right? These were serious things. So these are just some of the ways we can bring the names Rahman, Rahim, Rauf, you know, into our lives. Today, in the brief time that we have, we want to look at the names Malik, Malik, and Malik Al-Mulk. Now, Malik is, anybody can be a Malik. A Malik is an owner of something. If you say Malik Al-Bayt, the owner of the house, right? Malik Al-Sayyara, the owner of the car. A Malik is the owner of anything, because milk is property. Milkuk, your property. So a Malik is somebody who owns something. A Malik is a king. Malik, right? The difference between those two is that a Malik is the owner of something specific. Like if I say, you are the Malik of the Dura, of that popcorn. You know what I'm saying? You own that popcorn. But the Malik, the king, it speaks to a general sovereignty. Right? The king is not the owner of one specific thing. The king is the possessor of a dominion. It's not just, meaning even things that are, meaning everything, because in the case of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, everything is accounted for. But we're using worldly examples just to understand the nuance between these two names. A person that's a Malik, they have to have knowledge of what they own. Right? Like, this is my car, this is my coat, these are my boots, these are my jeans. Whereas the king, if I'm the king of Chicago, that means even things that I might not be aware of in Chicago, I'm still over them because I'm king. Everything. So one is more specific, one is more general. But then you have the third name, Malik Mulk. Means Allah is like the king of sovereignty, like the king of dominion. And this is a very powerful name because I don't know, you have to go back and brush up on your political philosophy. But even somebody that's a worldly king, every kind of monarchy is based on an implicit contract between the governed and the governor. That in some way, her being a queen or his being a king only comes from their acceptance of him as a king. I mean, if the people revolted, right, maybe he would try to, put down the revolt or to quash the revolt but if they wanted to revolt, they could, right? If he did something where they said, he did what? He's a Lakers fan? He's no longer the king of Chicago. At that point, if enough people say that, at least some of them are now disputing my kingship. He's not our king anymore. People that come from backgrounds, you may know when somebody says he's a king, somebody he's not a king. This person, he's not a king. He's a leader. He's not a leader. Like in the case of Trump, some people say the president, he's not my president. Right? People say that, right? That's not my president. And Orange, man, he's not my president, man. Because I think that statement, factually, maybe he was their president, but that statement is an indication that his being president is an extension of my allowing him to be president. That's what that means. Malikul Mulk means Allah is the king of sovereignty. He is not a king because you allow him to be. He's the king because he is, not because, meaning, even if you were to say, that ain't my Lord, he's still the king. I don't accept him, I don't believe in no God, he's still the king. Right? He's not the king because you acknowledge him as king. Like a worldly king is a king because you acknowledge them as king. Right? You're my king. But if the entire populace says, you're no longer our king, then you're no longer king. In fact, if the military says you're no longer our king, they call that a coup d'etat. You're no longer the king. So your being a king is only an extension of their allowing you to be a king. Whereas in the case of Allah, his being the king is an extension of his being. He's the Malikul Mulk. I'm the king because I'm the king. And I can't be anything else. Right? It's not like like a first among equals. I can't be anything else. Allah is king. That's it. Right? And I think that these analogies end up being very powerful because if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is king, you have to think about how you relate to him as king, right? So I used to work as a translator. And one of the most difficult words to translate for American English speakers is the word abd, right? Abd. Abd either means servant, slave, worshiper. Right? The word slave, especially for Black Americans, and really I think most Americans, it has such a negative connotation. When you hear it, it's just something that rubs some people wrong. As soon as they hear it, I have been giving khutbahs, people unfamiliar with Islam, maybe new Muslims, sitting there on the carpet. As soon as I say the slaves of Allah, I can look at their face. Because I think in their mind, they don't want to be a slave to anything. Because the word slave has such a negative, like I can't think of any positive signification for the word slave. That's how some people feel. You know, Rami Najatibi from Iman, I was giving a khutbah. He said, could you please not say slaves of Allah? Could you say anything other than servants, worshipers? Don't say slaves. In American English, it just doesn't. And I told him, I said, I'm sensitive to that. However, we are trying to convey the idea of milkut tam. I was talking about this last week. Complete and total ownership. If you say servant, you hear the action of serving, but you don't hear ownership. So you don't own a servant. If I say my servant, then I don't own my servant. My servant serves me, but I don't own my servant does not belong to me. I think everybody knows that. Servant is a person that we have a contractual relationship, right? They serve as my fill in the blank, and I offer them payment or something. But when you say slave, it indicates what? Milkut tam, complete ownership. And it's very difficult to convey that with any word other than slave. Now, you have other words that people can use, but those words are just archaic. Bond servant. I've seen that before, the bond servants of Allah, the bondsmen of Allah. I'm just like, you might as well just say a slave. You know what I'm saying? The bondsman, the bond servant of Allah, and so while I'm sensitive to Rami's objection, I'm sensitive to the history of that word in America, I still don't feel like there's any word better to convey that we belong to Allah. I can't think of a better way I wish I had a more expansive vocabulary, that we belong to God, not just that we worship God or we serve God. No, we belong to God. And in the Quran, the word ibad, those who belong to God. Maybe that's the translation. Maybe I just cracked it. Maybe I just did it. Just translated those who belong to Allah. Those who, as what? Ibad is the same thing. But those, maybe I'll start translating it. Those who belong to Allah. And if I say abd, the one who belongs to Allah, Rami sit there. Yes. Those who belong to Allah. That's what we're trying to convey when we use the word slave, the slaves of Allah, those who belong to Allah. But in belonging to Allah, you cannot belong to anything else. And that's why many classical writers will say, we use the term slave, but it's really about freedom and liberation. Because if you're a slave of Allah, you can't be a slave of anything else. You can't be a slave to money. You can't be a slave to power. You can't be a slave to your desires. If you're a slave of Allah, you can't be a slave to anything else. But I'm sensitive to that difficulty in translation. But when we say Allah is the Malik, he's the king, بيده الخير في يده كل شيء في يده كل شيء. Everything is in the hand of God. Everything is in the hand of God. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was with Ibn Abbas, and he said, but not Abdullah ibn Abbas. No, it was Abdullah ibn Abbas. Abdullah ibn Abbas has a brother named Fadl ibn Abbas, but nobody knows about Fadl ibn Abbas. So when you say Ibn Abbas, they think Abdullah ibn Abbas. Right? But he told him, he said, if everybody who has ever lived and ever will live asked Allah for everything they wanted, and he gave it to them all at the same time, it would not decrease what he has at all. right? This is when you say Malik Al-Mulk, you know, this is um, the expansive range of what God possesses. Everything. Everything in this creation belongs to God. Everything. And in as much as that is true, anything you want, you should ask God first, because he has everything. Anything you want, to ask God first before you ask anybody else. Ask God first. Right? Some scholars say that it is an affront to God as the possessor of dominion that you would ask anybody before you would ask him. Right? I mean, lillahi mathalul a'la, but you know, unto God belongs the highest, you know, example. But imagine me sitting here with a Najashi and him asking Yusuf if he could go to the bathroom. You know, Yusuf, I gotta go to the bathroom. Or Yusuf, you think I could watch a little TV tonight? How would you imagine me looking at him? You belong to me. No, that would be the response. Najashi sit here, yo, Yusuf, man, I want to watch Wednesday tonight. You think we get that going? Excuse me? No, I mean, you're my son. Why would you ask Yusuf? See, you see, like it's a visceral. If you belong to Allah, why would you ask somebody else? Why would you? You know, I was hoping I could. Excuse me. You belong to Allah. Ask Allah first, right? Now, maybe my son asked me. Then he goes and Yusuf and says, maybe catch my dad that Wednesday is a good show for kids or something. You know what? So, you know, we're not saying that you don't use the means at your disposal, but you ask God, you know, you ask God first, right? And that's, you know, I will say in my personal experience, I find that the things that give us the most anxiety are things that we're not talking to God about. It's almost like when you're in full operational mode, trying to figure something out. It's not until someone pauses you and asks, did you ask Allah about? Did you pray about this? Did you ask Allah to give you an opening, to give you guidance, to show you the way? Okay, then just relax. Right? Just relax and just wait for those things to present themselves. But many times when you find that people are really stressing, it's like, man, I've been relying on myself the entire time. Relying on my ingenuity, relying on my network, relying on my work ethic, relying on my expertise, my training. Did you ask it? Have you spoken to God about this? Okay, well, maybe that's it. Because everything you seek, depending on Allah, will be easy. And everything you seek, depending on yourself, will be difficult. The law. Everything you seek, depending on Allah, will be easy. Doesn't mean that it won't entail hard work. See, some people hear that and they're like, word? You know what I'm saying? Did you say easy? No. It means that the hard work becomes easy. Right? Anybody who has ever accomplished anything significant, they had to work hard. But if they were relying on Allah, they say, man, you studied for your MCAT, went through med school, did your rotations, did your residency. Man, was that hard? It was challenging. Right? But alhamdulillah, Allah gave me the ability to do it. Right? Allah gave me that's what I mean by easy. Not like it'll be a breeze, you know. No, Allah gave me the ability to do it. Not everybody can, you know, do those overnighters, and not everybody can, you know, some people just have performance anxiety on exams. Not everybody can do it. I mean, I'm a good test taker. See, when the test hits the desk, I'm all business. Now it's business time. You know what I mean? But some people they see the exam and it's just they panic, they get anxious, right? So when I say Allah will make it easy, not that it'll be a breeze, but your hard work will become something you can manage. Anything you seek depending on yourself, Allah will make it difficult for you, man. And the Prophet ﷺ said, "Ad-du'a mukhul ibadah," that your personal prayer to Allah, not your ritual prayer, not your salat, it is the essence of your worship. It's the core, the best part of your worship. So if you're worshiping the Malik, the one that possesses everything, the Malik, the king, the Malik Al-Mulk, the self-sovereign king, call upon him, man. Ud'uhu. Call upon him. Ask him. One of the things that distinguishes God from people is that people, even people who love you, they do get tired of you asking. That's just how people are. Even people who love you, man, get tired of you asking. And it's something that we feel too. When I've asked somebody for something, it's almost like you're like, I don't really want to. Do you think that you could grab the package in front of my house? My neighbor, her name is Miss Lois. I travel, her daughter's name is Wandalyn. I'm traveling, and we get the notice that the Amazon has dropped the package off, but horse thieves, and steal the package. I make that sound every time I'm about to ask her. That's my little, that's my little. I know you're probably sitting home cozy with your feet up, just relaxing. And I really hate to ask you to do this. Come out of your house, go down your stairs, go into my gate, and grab my package, but I just hoping that if it wasn't too much trouble, you could maybe grab my package for me. Okay, I'll grab it this time. Right? When you feel that, you should not feel any apprehension in calling on Allah. If you call on Allah 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, an innumerable amount of times, there should be no apprehension. You should never have this attitude, it's me again, asking for the same thing that I've been asking for. And I realize at this point, maybe, hey, you don't have to approach Allah like that. Just keep asking, because really the giving is in your asking. That's a very, we want what we want. But if you're asking Allah for it, and you're going to Allah for it, you've already been given everything. Right? You have Allah. As long as you're asking Allah for what you want, the giving is in your asking. You're asking Allah for it, you already have everything. Because you're with, Allah's with you. You're asking, Allah's with you. Just keep asking. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ فَيَرْزُقُهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ. Whoever has a deep reverence for God in his heart, God will provide for you, give you things that you couldn't even ponder, you couldn't even fathom, you couldn't even conceive of. So it's not even just in asking Allah for what you want. Just ask Allah for what He wants to give you. And you might get things that you didn't even think about. Man, I thought I wanted this, but this is even better. Right? This is what I wanted. So this is what I got. Right? So inshallah, we'll stop there, inshallah. And open the floor. Could be questions about what we covered today. Could be questions about anything. Could be comments. Just interested in you guys taking it.
Maybe a question on practice. You mentioned a few classes ago. You save up everything that has the income to properly dispose of it by burning. Does that apply to the others of the beautiful names as well as the proper practice to not throw out any of those names?
SubhanAllah.
And just the other that just for the Arabic, or should we be doing that? For example.
I am unsure whether or not this is considered the etiquette that we should have with the name of Allah, or this is from the halal and the haram. I'm not sure. And this is one thing when you've learned from people and you kind of trust them, you're not always asking, wait, do we have to do this? Or is this just what you do? Right? You're not always asking about that. Right? So I really don't know. I'll have to check. Is it from the halal and the haram? Like we can't dispose of the name of Allah and throw it in the trash. People that I went to school with, I would see that they would do that. If somebody gave them like a cheap, advertisement or something like that, and it had the name of Allah on it, they would not just take it and throw it in the trash.
We were like writing a card for somebody and give it to them.
No, here's the thing. I've always applied that to the Arabic. Now, there's two ways that I do it. One, because I have thank you cards from like 2001. And, either the Bismillah Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim is written, and I make it into other things. So I take the bad, I make it like loops, and I make it so it no longer says Bismillah. It's just some kind of abstract thing that I've taken. I've taken the Bismillah. So like the hat, I take something else, do like this, and then the C, and put another bubble on top. So by the time I get done, like marking it up, it no longer says this. It says something else. It's still the track. It doesn't say Bismillah. It says something else. Because I marked over it. Or I put in the 10, I just burn it. Right? But this was something that man, I used to attend a madrasa. But subhanAllah, when you start getting older, man, you can look back on your life and be like, wait, I was there. But I used to live in this religious school outside of Chicago in El. And everybody was Desi. We had like maybe a couple of non-Desi students. And on Friday nights, Maulana Aziz he would tell us stories. And even though the stories were in Urdu, somebody would translate for me. I would sit back there and, listening. And I'm talking about, he had such a passion for storytelling. And the stories that he would tell, they would hit you right there. So I remember he was telling this story about this man that was alcoholic. He used to visit brothels. He was kind of out there. This guy was kind of out there. And he said that one day he was drunk and coming home from a brothel. And Aziz was like, he was stumbling, like. And he said that the man saw the name of Allah on a piece of paper in the dirt. And he said that, he picked it up and just cleaned it off. Just took it to his house and, just sat it on his mantle. And he was mentioning that this was the beginning of a great tawbah in that man's life, right? That just this act of him seeing the name of Allah on the ground, he was drunk. It just come from, a house of ill repute, but just that he saw the name of Allah and it moved something in his heart. He said, oh man, it's the name of Allah on the ground, man. And he picked it up and he dusted it off and sat it on his mantle. And then he started saying, this is why, for you all as talabul ilm, right, as students, you should never discard the name of Allah. Never throw it in the trash. You should never, step all over it. Just have some esteem for it. And you'll see great openings in your life. So if you get something, put it in the tin, burn it, or remark it before you discard it. But I never thought to ask, is that wajib? Like, do you have to do that? It was just a story. And from then, it just became a part of my practice. Like, okay, right? So it's sometimes weird to kind of retrace your own steps, where and how you learn certain things. Because now, like I have children, I can imagine one of my kids asking me, Dad, do we have to do this? because they weren't there living at the school to hear that story. They want to know from the book and the sunnah, is this something we have to do or not? And I was like, no, it was this the school that I went to. And I was like, man, we don't care about that, man. It was this whole beautiful story around it. That's how I started doing it, because the first thing I didn't know anything about that. And I was like, oh, and it just became a part of my practice. So I don't know, man. I don't know the halal and haram. It was something I heard. I was like, and to this day, I don't know why. I mean, you'd have to hear him tell the story in Urdu, but he was a very good storyteller. Because even with them translating to me, it was like, I mean, he would tell stories sometimes 45, 50 minutes. One story. And I mean, some of the stories he told me, you'd be like, whoa. I remember once he told us this story of these Indian guys that were sailors. And something happened where they got lost at sea and they couldn't get back to port. And so none of them were particularly religious. But they entered the month of Ramadan while they were at sea. And somebody said, well, man, who's going to lead us in Taraweeh? And then one person said, well, maybe, I do know how to read from the Mus'haf. I can do Nazar, so I'll just read. And somebody said, no. In our school, or Hanafi at that time, in our school, no Nazar. You can't read from the Mus'haf in Taraweeh. It has to be from memory. And he said that this man memorized the juz every day and recited that juz in Taraweeh, that he memorized the day on the ship. He would memorize the juz and then he would recite it the same day. Right? All 30 days he did that. And he said, he knew the man. He was like, because I asked him, I said, ambitious, I said, what's the shortest amount of time that a person became a hafiz? He was like 30 days. I said, no, that's not possible, And he told me this whole story. This man got stranded at sea. He wasn't even a religious man, but he wanted to just lead that small jama'ah in Taraweeh. So he would memorize in the morning, then recite it. And he said, right now you can go to this masjid in Lucknow. He's in there leading the prayers right now. And so I'd be like, he would like, he would tell stories like that. And you'd be like, no. And he'd be like, well, this is no lie. This is no lie. Now, I remember once, man, he told me a story that, he would tell me stories about like exorcisms, people exorcising jinn from people, and and I would be like, hey man, come on, man. He would look at me, wallahi. I do not tell you this story to titillate you or to, say something sensational. No, I saw this with my eyes. I saw this person convulsing. I was like, get out. Wow. Right? Get out of here, man. And so, it exposed me to the fact that I feel like in the human experience, man, there's two separate experiences. You have some people who never experience stuff like that, right? Maybe they accept it on faith, or maybe they reject it. I've never seen it like that. And then you got some people that it's like, all the time. and they seem like solid, decent, not liars, not, I remember once when I was in Yemen, it was Sudani Sheikh. One of the American students talking about somebody levitating. He said, levitating? My grandfather used to do it all the time. That's nothing. That's nothing. No, no. And it wasn't like he said it like, you talking about, that's nothing. My grandpa used to do it all the time. That's nothing. You impressed with that? That's wow. I thought you wanted to see something. And I was sitting there like, oh. Americans, man, they be impressed by a man levitating. That's nothing. Happens all the time. You know what I mean? That's one thing that I think if you expose yourself to a lot of good Muslim spaces, you come to appreciate the wide range of kind of experiences that people worshiping Allah are having, so that you don't confine yourself to your own experience. I feel like a lot of Western atheist materialistic philosophy is very lonely. A person saying, because this never happened to me, I've never seen this before, this is all fake. Whereas if it's like, no, maybe it doesn't happen to you, but I can show you people that are like, yeah, man, levitate? Come on, man. We do it all the time. Come on. Don't get for real. Right? I mean, miracles. You want to see some miracles? Oh, man. Hold on now. I'm right now in Medina giving salam to the Prophet Sallallahu. Okay, he just said while he was you know, he's like, wait, what's going on here? You know, it's just, you know what I'm saying? I mean, people having different experiences, man. But mashallah, so I guess my short answer is I don't know. So I'm going with just some story and some etiquette, but that's what I do. Other questions, ideas? Alhamdulillah. 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 بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. جزاك الله خير. Yusuf, man, I want to see somebody levitate. Come on, man. My house tonight will be levitating. It's nothing. Don't catch us, man. We do that all the time. Walk like this. You don't walk